Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Direct Recap show. I'm your host, Corey Deering, and alongside me, as always, is that retro code, Eddie V.
Yes! I'm so happy to be doing this. It has been such a long time that we did a recap, boss.
I would say, 4 months and some change?
Yeah.
So we are going to be recapping the Nintendo Direct that happened on June 22nd, 2022. As you can tell by the thumbnail, Nintendo did about a 24-ish minute presentation on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, coming out on July 29th. So that's just a mere 5 weeks away. I thought the presentation was pretty good. I know people were disappointed that this wasn't a real Direct, but this is their big game for the summer, and I think that they did a great job of kind of getting people excited. You know, I think overall the presentation was great. I like how they did a little deep dive on kind of the world and the story and just how open this game is, because it's an open world. It is a fully open world. It doesn't seem like it's zones like in 2 and 1, right? It's definitely an open world. So, and I like the characters, and it's just a beautiful looking game. Ed, what did you think of the presentation?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. My jaw was on the ground just looking at the graphics, like the environments, but then how this game is going to be so story driven, like very heavy. And I know Nintendo is not known for big stories, but I kind of feel like this is like a start for not just Xenoblade, but for Nintendo in general. I'm like, if you guys could tell these deep stories, that would be a new look for Nintendo. Monolith Software is great at what they do, but man, when I was just watching the presentation, I'm like, oh, okay, so I see where that's going. I'm like, wait a minute. If this is stuff that's just happening in the beginning in some parts of the game, how long is this game going to be? Like, I don't know who the villain is yet. I don't know if we're going to be in mechs or anything. I understand like the merge system, like with the two characters, but I'm like, what are they incorporating that they didn't show in this presentation? And it just made me hyper for this game.
Yeah, this game definitely has a really interesting kind of battle system. The merging system is interesting. They kind of showed off a little bit of just how each kind of they also showed off, like, when you go to a location, like, okay, there's the big like mech kind of thing in each location that you kind of have to solve the whatever around it, and each location is a fast travel point, which they clearly took from Breath of the Wild, I feel like. And obviously, like, 1 and 2 are such huge games, and those worlds were kind of tedious to explore in that sense, right? Like, if you needed to go back, like, there wasn't really a great fast travel system, and so the fact that each kind of city or location that you discover, you can just kind of go to after you discover it, is a really nice kind of middle ground, I feel, of that. And so Ed, I know we don't want to spend an hour talking about this, but let's just kind of go down kind of what notes you have here, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, the game has 6 main characters, each belonging to 1 or 2 warring nations. This includes Noah, Ewan, and Lance, who represent the country of Kiev, and while Mayo, Tyon, and Senna belong to Agnes. There's 2 different factions that's fighting each other, because the story kind of resolves around these 2 nations fighting against each other, because they each have 10 years to live, and known as a turn. They're fighting the opposing nation to honor a homecoming ceremony. So if they win, by the time they get ready to leave this world, this queen would come out and present them to like present them as they like leave the world. And when you look at the direct, if you die in battle, you see like this red kind of, it's almost like a deletion, like this red stuff going into these robots to like charge them up, but it's kind of like a deletion from a computer. Because you kind of go into these red sprites. It looks like data being like sucked in. And when you are honored by the queen leaving the world, you have this gold deletion to it. But however, in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, these main characters who become fugitives, and they each join together to fight this opposition rather than fight against themselves. And they meet this man who tells all of them that they have a bigger story, a bigger quest to seek out and everything. And so that revolves around the game. So it's very interesting on where they're going with the story, and how these characters are going to be interacting, how it looks like uh Noah, he is kind of the leader of that you guys see, and Mio, uh she's almost like the leader for the other side, and how their stories kind of combine together. Then at some point in time, they go into this dreamlike sequence. You see Noah's eye have like a different color,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like in this gold kind of universe where Mio is standing underneath Noah, and that's when like more stuff is happening. So there's things that in the game we just don't know yet, but those characters in that story, like I said, I was thoroughly shocked on where they're going. I'm like 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of wondering, I'm like, how are they birthed? Like, they don't look like they are, because to me 10 years, I'm thinking like, oh, they died, they're 10 years old, you mean, but these are adults, and I wonder how they're going to explain more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a mystery here and kind of some sort of, you know, something that's going to unravel around the mystery of their 10-year kind of cycle. And I wonder if there's someone here that will break that cycle. I just, it gives me kind of Final Fantasy X vibes in a way, where
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, not that it's kind of the opposite actually, but like, Sin, the enemy in Final Fantasy X, the kind of major player in that game, has a death span of about 10 years, and then he'll resurface, right? And then they have to find this uh kind of new solution to kill Sin, because like, spoilers for Final Fantasy X, I guess it's 20 years old. You guys can play it on Switch if you haven't played it already. But like, the summoner, which is played by the role of Yuna in Final Fantasy X, but there have been previous summoners who would sacrifice their life to kind of you know push Sin back and kill him off for his
Hmm.
10-year cycle of peace and prosperity and whatnot. And the whole story is they want to find a new way to defeat Sin and not have him come back ever. And then the story plays out and you see what happens. But I
Yes.
wonder if there's going to be something like that in the story, and them trying to find a new way to kind of break their cycle, and the 10-year kind of span is going to be broken in a sense.
Well, in the trailer, when the queen or this princess, I'm just calling her queen, when she's like sending them up in the ceremony, it looks like she got a big role to play. Like, she she feels like the villain in this game in a sense, but I cannot,
Well,
I'm not sure.
I almost feel like the villains are those masked characters, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so yeah, it's it's good. It's I want to. intrigued by this story, and I wonder
Mm-hmm.
how much the story is actually going to connect back to the first two games. Because as we see later in the direct, that tease that A, new heroes and companion quests are coming, but B, there's a shot of the sword in this game, Rex's sword from the second game, and then the Monado from the first game, right?
Yes.
And you kind of see them all sitting together, and it's a really cool shot. And Dan and I were talking in the Discord about it, how cool that shot is, and how we were hoping that maybe Rex and Shulk will end up in this game somehow, or some variation of the Xenoblade 2 and 1 characters.
Well, everything is still taking place on the world that Xenoblade 1 and 2 takes place.
Right.
So, and this is in the future. So maybe those swords do have the memories, do play a part of what's going on. And I wonder now, because this is going to be the third game. Is this like, Nintendo loves doing stuff in threes. Like we look at the Triforce. Is this the Triforce with the game? Like this is the third game. This may be the third blade.
What if all the swords connect together to make like a super weapon?
Exactly.
Gives it like real Power Rangers vibes here. But yeah, I mean, I think there could be something really interesting here to play at, and I'm interested to see how the characters and the time thing kind of plays out. Ed, I want to move on to the world itself and just how massive and beautiful this world looks. It is. It's fallen over, guys.
Sorry about that.
I want to talk about the world. It looks massive, but it looks like a living, like kind of like a living world. Like we kind of talk about Breath of the Wild and how big that world is, and exploring it was fun, but there's not really a lot of towns and just random kind of thing. Like there's not like a city every 10 steps or whatever, and it kind of felt a little empty in some areas in terms of a living, breathing world, right? Okay, yeah, you can go into the forest and there's bears and deer and enemies kind of wandering around, but like you don't really get big cities in that game. And this game looks like there are a lot of kind of small towns you can visit, a lot of areas that you can kind of go and explore. So what do you think, Ed? What are you thinking about this?
I love the fact that there's camps that's around that you could go and meet and like charge up, be able to buy weapons and equipment and stuff that you're going to need. I think they literally, just like you said, Breath of the Wild, I think they learned from that game to include these little small places that you find throughout this massive world. First of all, how is this world possible? On how gorgeous it looks. Just like it looks like a painting in a sense, but it's so detailed, and I don't know how Monolith does it. I'm like, how are you guys able to make this beautiful, expansive world, even though it may not feel it that way when you look at the map? When you're running through, it feels like there's just this big environment, and I know it's because some of the enemies and stuff, but I'm just impressed, and I wonder what little secrets I'm going to find. Am I going to find a hidden town in a cave that I don't know about? Is there going to be a campsite that I could literally go into and set up, or anything? There's so many possibilities. I'm blown away on what they're doing with that.
Yeah, and what was kind of really cool to see was, there's a lot of texture detail in this game that didn't really show up in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or even Breath of the Wild to that extent, right? Where like there's a scene in the direct where they're kind of sitting at the table because they were explaining cooking and that kind of thing that you can do in this game. And you could see like, obviously if you own another console, this isn't as impressive, but for a game that's as large as this running on the Switch, right? Like you see the bricks and the like little rocks that are kind of laying and scattered because the bricks are broken. And You see the grass kind of waving back and forth like you did in Breath of the
Mm-hmm.
Wild, and you see just kind of junk laying around that you could tell this civilization is rebuilding or was broken at one point, right? And it's just there's a lot of detail in this world, and then when you get out into like the big open fields and stuff, you see obviously you see the giant sword that has pierced the world, right? That's kind of like how it
Yes.
opens. And you see just this like these lakes, and water is something that I get is not as impressive uh this far out into past like the 360 Xbox or 360 PS3 generation. uh but they did a great job of making this world feel alive and
Mm-hmm.
large and explorable all at the same time, which we know that Monolith is working on Breath of the Wild 2, and they're kind of the map designers of the world, if you will. Their tech is used for that, and I'm excited to see what this game has to offer in terms of the world.
They paid attention to detail in this world, and I think because now that it's been 5 years that they have worked on the Switch and everything, I think they kind of learn and definitely making new assets and or improving assets that they probably have in their system. They really paid attention to detail to be like, okay, now that we have put not only Breath of the Wild but Xenoblade 2, putting the definitive version, working on our new game, and also doing the tournament expansion, we have enough information on how to develop on the Switch and
Right.
really be able, probably a little bit cheat some places here and there, but you wouldn't even know it because of how detailed the world is.
Right.
Like
So yeah.
they're masters.
Yeah. They really are, in terms of like they are. I think they're Nintendo's best world designers,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's impressive coming from a company that has developed worlds for Zelda and Metroid and Mario, right? Because I mean, it's really cool to see them just, oh, so good.
I, I think what works for them, and I love the fact that you said they're the best world creators. They don't have to worry about level design like the rest of the Nintendo developers are. So I think because they don't have to worry about that, they could just be able to build.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if they need to do a level or something, they probably could go to any other people, other developers in Nintendo and be able to get their help. But because they don't have to worry about that, we can worry about battle mechanics and the world itself. And that's pretty much it. And with the
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yeah. So, the last thing I kind of want to touch on here, well, the last couple things I guess is there's a crafting system, there's a cooking system, which I think we kind of knew was coming,
Mm-hmm.
based off the last couple games. Amiibo support, Shulk Amiibo, and I'm assuming whenever Pyra and Mithra come out, those will also be usable. Did they say
Yes.
if you could use other amiibo like Breath of the Wild, where like,
You could
okay,
use any amiibo.
okay, yeah, because like I remember they were, when Breath of the Wild came out, the Zelda ones obviously gave you like kind of bigger major items,
Mm-hmm.
but then if you scanned Mario, it would give you like mushrooms or something, right, and to
Yeah.
cook with, or that kind of thing. So that's cool that you can use any amiibo. I didn't really catch that part. But is there anything else you really want to hit on with this? I think that this game looks wonderful. I am very, very excited for this. I was excited when they announced it, right? Like I was like, okay, cool, another Xenoblade game. But now watching this
Yeah.
deep dive, it's 5 weeks away. Fire Emblem Warriors is not really that impressive. Not that they're the same game, but like to me, I'm not really a big Warriors fan. But as someone who
Mm-hmm.
loves Three Houses and wanted more of that world, that's a game that I've been playing the demo of because the game comes out tomorrow, and we'll have impressions of that on Nintendo Power Block proper.
Yes.
But is there? I just think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 looks like a banger of a game, and I think this game is potentially the game where Xenoblade becomes mainstream, like Fire Emblem did with Awakening.
Yeah. I the one thing I do want to touch on is I'm glad they said that this game will have DLC at $30.
Yeah.
And this is what you're all going to get. There's some new story parts. We're not ready to reveal it at, but that I love when companies be like, okay, this is stands up. There's going to be DLC. This is all the stuff that's going to contain. At a later date, after the game comes out, they'll probably speak more on it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know if there's a bundle yet, but now I think the only thing that I wish they said in the direct, and I know they could have said, was about the collector's edition. I think because of the fiasco that happened, and this was already pre-recorded, they probably couldn't add any new when they're going to do another release.
Which is fine. I don't think they needed that for a deep dive of the game. I don't think they needed that. So.
Yeah, but like pretty much everything else, I think it was an expectation for me, for it, because of not knowing that they was going to do a direct, and this had happened a while back. I think that's what I was expecting that they would add on, or Nintendo would do a tweet after the direct and say, "Okay, I know we didn't add it, but the new pre-orders for the collection is up." But they said that's going to be at a later date, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, everything. This really not only gets me hyped for big RPGs or anything, I really feel like if this game can pull off everything that they showcase in this direct, I feel like this is literally this may be another Game of the Year contender. And I'm not just talking about Game of the Year for role-playing games. I mean for 2022.
Right. Yeah. So
you know,
yeah, I agree with you. I think that this game is going to be something really. I seriously think after watching this deep dive, and I know that I'm not the biggest Xenoblade fan, but I am excited to play them when they come out. Right, like I'm not like a Xenoblade fan the way that I am a Zelda fan, but I think these games always look interesting, always look appealing, and always look fun. And I think I'm ready to jump into this world. But like I said before, I think this is the game. I think this is the game that makes this series mainstream. So.
Yes. Last thing I do want to say, I cannot wait to see the cosplay. I love the outfits that are in this game. The cosplay that people are going to do is going to be crazy.
There are some outfits in here that people will probably love to put on Instagram, we'll say.
Yes.
Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of the Direct Recap Show. We will be back with another Direct Recap Show the next time there is a Nintendo Direct, which is hopefully soon, right? Like yes. I think the rumor is, end of, like, maybe next week, maybe early July. So we will be there when it's there. You can find this episode on YouTube or on the Boss Rush podcast or the Nintendo Pow Block podcast feed. You can follow us at Pow Block Podcast on Twitter. You can follow Ed at That Retro Code. You can follow me at I Am Corey in HD. Please check out Nintendo Pow Block every Wednesday on your podcast service of choice. Check out Expansion Pass, also found on that feed on Sundays. And we will see you next time here on the Direct Recap Show. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.